Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pixelists, the podcast about all the nerdy things we love and enjoy. I'm Will, that's Blake. Today we're here to talk a little Critical Role.
You sound like you have a cold.
I kind of do.
Are you okay?
I'm okay, but I do kind of have a little bit of a, congestion thing going on.
Don't you love how like in 2020, anytime there was like this, is that COVID? Do you have COVID? Like if you sneeze on like in a public space, you're just like, sorry.
Everyone backs away like 10 feet.
Yeah. You sound rough though today, man. I'm sorry for you. I feel sorry for you.
No, I mean, for what it's worth, I feel fine. Like I'm not like,
yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I just got a little, something going on up here.
Yeah. Well, your beard is good, so you do have something going on.
I'm good at finding shortcuts around this part of town.
So, and I don't know if I have you turned down or not, but also you're a little quiet, which that may just be me. Sorry, we probably should have worked this out. This is so like on brand for us. But it's probably just me. Don't worry about it. Just ignore it.
All right. I don't think I didn't change anything on my end. But,
I think it's just your voice is just throwing. I'm going to need you to fix your voice just moving forward. So
maybe I could get a little neti pot or something going.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you ever done one of those?
Is that the thing that goes up your nose?
Yeah, I've never done one, but
I have. I did one. So when I worked at summer camp, I got like a really bad, I think it was pneumonia in hindsight, but this was like back in the day where like you'd get sick and your boss, like I remember being really sick and my boss was like, you got cystitis? And like, I'm like deeply ill.
He wants you to go be around a bunch of kids.
Yeah, I know, right? So it was a weird time, but yeah, I had a friend who worked there who you got to get that last little you had to get that last in there. I don't know why it tickled me so much. Anyway, so I had a friend who had one, and I thought he was pranking me, but he was like, "Yeah, you just pour this in your nose," and I was like, "All right." And it did helped a lot actually, but it was like my nightly ritual because I was really sick for like maybe a week. So I definitely should have gone home. Should not have been there.
Well, hey, we live and learn.
Yeah. So other than that though, how is your day going?
So far, so good. I got my coffee, which it was very, very hot, but it now has reached optimal sipping status.
I am a little late on my sipping status because I got it ready, I set it down, and then I was doing a little bit of work before we started our call.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now it's like a little chilly, chillier than I need, and then my wife has a friend over, so like I can't leave the room, Then I'd have to talk to them, and so I'm just stuck with my cold coffee, I guess. So,
I hate it when that happens. Which I know you can't leave the room, so you can't do this.
When people come over, yeah.
But what I usually do if that happens is I'll just like go get some ice and just go all the way and like try to trick myself into I have an iced coffee.
I don't like iced coffees.
Oh, really?
I know there's gonna be another thing. I just I just don't get it. I don't think.
Well, it's just if you level the playing field, I'm a hot coffee guy for sure. But it's just like sometimes if you really want your coffee and it's like 90 degrees outside, it's nice to have an iced coffee.
Yeah.
Just so you're not like sweating and drinking ultra hot.
Now that I think about it, I take it back because I do from 7 Brew. My wife gets a drink for me there. That's always, I've never thought of it as an iced coffee, but it is an iced coffee because it's a coffee drink with ice in it. So
yeah.
But I think they like load it up with like syrup or sugar because I cannot help myself. I gulp that thing down in about 12 seconds. So
yeah.
I can't just sip it.
Yeah. I can only imagine they usually do it up big at those types of places.
Yeah. Yeah. But you're a black coffee kind of guy.
Yep.
We talked about this on the show.
Yep.
Yeah. How about you guys listening? How do you guys like your coffee? Do you drink coffee? I
Yeah.
wasn't really a coffee guy until after college, really.
Same. I didn't have my first cup of coffee ever in my life until after college.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Which is
weird.
probably well, didn't you just say the same was true of you?
I didn't drink it on the reg.
Oh.
I didn't drink it on the reg. I had tried it.
Oh.
You barbarian.
I don't know why I didn't. I feel like no one in my family drank coffee like growing up.
Do you remember me with cheese dip as a kid?
Yeah. Blake would
It was
never
a-
eat cheese dip because he had a bad experience one time. And I was like, dude, just try it again. It's so
And
good.
now, yeah, it is so good. All right, what are we doing today?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
So I think today, for those of you joining, we're talking Critical Role episode 55 today, Hope Within History. And do we have any announcements before we jump into talking about the show today?
We do have a couple really quick I wanted to cover.
Oh, yeah, please do.
First, I just wanted to, I felt appropriate. Maybe it's not. Maybe don't spend too much time on it, I guess. But I figure we would briefly talk about Creator Clash. That happened this past weekend. Marisha finally had her fight. Blake and I were both watching it. It was cool to see. I tweeted something similar to this. Like,
Yeah.
ultra proud of Marisha. She's a freaking warrior for going the distance. But it was a bit like hard to watch just because there was such a gap in experience. Like Haley, I think that's her
Yeah,
opponent.
she had already done a Creator Clash,
Yeah,
right?
she did it last year. So she's had
yeah.
like whatever training time plus a whole additional year over
Right.
Marisha.
Yeah.
And I just think that really, you could tell.
Yeah.
But like I said, champion for making it the full 5 rounds, given that fact. She basically is a Bo out there. But my like favorite part of the whole thing was just like watching all the cast come out in like the robes and stuff, and they had that like handoff of the sword. But especially Travis, like sitting like right behind the corner, and you could hear him like distinctly.
Yeah, I could hear him. I thought that was really great.
Yeah, me too.
It's fun how these people are like best friends in real life, which is obvious, I guess, to say, but I don't know. It kind of just brings me back to the roots of like, this is a D&D table who they like playing D&D together.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. They really like, it's not a fake chemistry for the show or anything. They definitely are that close, which is just, fun to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's really all I had to say about it, unless you had anything else to say. I just figured we'd briefly mention it. And then the only other thing is, if you guys missed it yesterday, there was finally the trailer for the next season of Dimension 20, which Matt Mercer is going to be at the helm of. And, I won't describe the trailer. You can go watch it yourselves. But the gist of it is it's going to be a prequel series to another D20 campaign. And to my understanding, a fan favorite campaign, A Crown of Candy. So I thought it was funny that, they brought Brennan on and he kind of did this prequel campaign in Calamity. And now they're having Matt on their show and he's kind of doing an equivalent thing. So I'm excited to check that out. I think it starts sometime next month.
We gotta, maybe I'll ask this to people in the channel.
Mm-hmm.
I think Will and I have agreed we really want to watch A Crown of Candy. And this is even to you, Will, do you think we need to watch it and or finish it before the prequel? Or I guess it'd just be good to do, right? Because I really want to watch. It's called the Ravening War, the Ravening War.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know how to pronounce things.
Me neither.
The Ravening War, I think. But
yeah, I was having the same thought. Since it is a prequel, it seems like you don't have to have seen it, in the same way where if it was a sequel, but I think there obviously probably will be some references and like world building that you might go over your head if you haven't seen it. So I think I don't know how long the campaign is. Like, I don't know how much of a commitment it would be to say like, I'm going to watch it before this new one comes out. They're obviously way shorter than something like Critical Role. So I think it is probably feasible, but I haven't actually looked into it, so I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
but one thing off the top of my head, which again, don't know if this will happen, don't know if it's feasible. But for those of you like Blake and I who, come from Critical Role and maybe haven't seen D20 or at least haven't seen this original Crown of Candy campaign, maybe thinking about doing some like watch parties in the Discord to catch up before
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Matt's D20 starts. So if that interests you, just join the Discord if you haven't already and keep an eye on that. But yeah, excited for that for sure. And
Yeah.
other than that, I think that's all I got.
Okay, cool. Well, fam, whenever we jump into a discussion about a Critical Role episode, we like to do a little bit of a recap. Episodes can be kind of long, and so we like to do just a 10 to 15 minute, here's what happened. And so we also like to split that off as a separate video if you want to watch just the recaps. So if you are watching just the recap video, there'll be a link in the description that has a full breakdown of our thoughts on the episode. And if you have thoughts on the episode too, we want to know what you think. So let us know in the comments as well. So this was episode 55, Hope Within History. And we are essentially picking up from where we left previously, which was, by the way, Will, your throat clear is picking up in the in the microphone. By
Oh,
the
I'm
way,
sorry.
I thought I would just settle that now before before we go through the whole recap.
Okay,
But
yeah, I'm sorry.
no, you're good. So we pick up right after the events at the DNO Emporium. And if you recall, the party basically helped Chetney's former boss partner, Ultgar, with firebugs. And now the party is heading to the diarchy, the king and queen, to basically discuss the situation with the bull and figure out what happens next. So the party begins making their way to the Citadel, and it's here that they explore kind of the relationship of the diarchy. If you remember what was discussed in a previous episode, and we get more clarity here, whenever Malesmere fell and the elves left, they were welcomed into Uthadurn, and that is really where the diarchy started. So we have an elven king and a dwarven queen. However, it seems to be political in nature. It doesn't seem to be romantic, and in fact, the party kind of questions how odd it is that, well, why haven't they consummated their relationship? Like, what's going on here? Like, are they like secretly in love? Are they openly in love? Like, what does this look like? And this is going to be actually a just kind of like a fun side point for the conversation that they're going to have. So all that to say, they make their way to the Citadel. There are a couple of interactions where guards are kind of like, well, who's that guy? Because if you remember, Chetney wasn't actually with the party in the previous encounter. But they're like, oh, he's with us. It's all good. And the party basically makes their way to the diarchy where they have a conversation with the king and queen. And as you would expect, the king and queen are very much grateful for their help. And they begin to share more information about this celestial bull, basically explaining that, yeah, this was a creature that was one of the guardians of Malesmere. And when Malesmere fell, we felt it was only appropriate to bring it here in sort of like a way to honor it. And the party begins to ask about, well, what exactly happened in Malesmere? And the king is basically like, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was this toxic crawl of shadow energy under this big looming ruinous moon, to which the party, I think it's actually Abria, is like, was this during the Applebee solstice? Which Matt is just like, actually, Matt's going to have a lot of interactions this episode where he's just like, really, guys? And the king is basically like, I never thought about it, but yeah, I think it was during a apogee solstice. They also ask about Ludinus Deleth, and they explain that they had actually been on Marquette, that Ludinus was mostly responsible, or not mostly, was responsible for the situation they're in now. And the king basically explains, Ludinus kind of kept to himself. He really kind of kept to his own research, especially after some political drama with other individuals in Malesmere. But beyond that, not really knowing much about Ludinus. They also share some more information, most notably, scarily, that among the list of magics that aren't working, it seems that resurrection magic, revivify, and I guess those are the two mostly, but
Oh.
those kinds of spells are not working, and it's got temples in a panic, and it's, as a watcher of the show, had me in a panic. And then all while this conversation is happening, the F.C.G is trying to do insight checks on the king and queen, trying to figure out, is there any chemistry there? F.C.G is going to roll a high insight check. He's going to get a whisper. Fern is going to do a high insight check, I think of a 30. Whenever they're talking about lewdness to the king, she's going to get a whisper. And then there'll be another whisper that I'll mention in a second, but lots of whispers from insight checks today.
Yeah.
In this episode. They also ask about the Vellum Steeple. Hey, is there any way we can get teleported to see our friends? And they're like, the networks are down, like it's not working. And also another really important detail, the Apogee Solstice should have ended the day before, and yet it continues. They don't know why, but it seems to just be continuing on for some reason. So all that to say, they decide from this conversation to go to Malesmere. They get sort of directions from the king and queen, and it's going to be about a week's travel, and they have a variety of paths that they can take, but ultimately they're going to decide to travel there on Goat, which we'll get to later in the episode. They do mention Drixlix and his scheme with Ultgar, and provide the proof of that happening. And then also F.C.G does mention, in such dire times, it would be great to have a loved one to cozy up with, to which there's an insight check on the king, and Imogen does detect thoughts and sees an image of a young elven man in the king's mind before that memory sort of vanishes, and there is like a sense of sadness, to which the king basically says, those times are behind me. So kind of sad. All that to say, the party then decides to, they do get a mithril half plate +1 as a reward, which ultimately goes to F.C.G. And the party then decides to basically split up. Some people are going to go to the Vellum Steeple, and then Frida and F.C.G are going to go to Jacoby's. Now, in this, as this party is splitting up, Frida does steal away with Deanna for a second, and basically is like, hey, I think I have a crush on F.C.G. I've never met anyone like him. Yeah, it gets a little spicy here. And there's this natural chemistry between them because they are Aormatons. They, in F.C.G's case, has never met anyone like themselves. And Deanna basically gives her blessing, is like, I love you. I'm happy for you. I hope it works out. Over at the Vellum Steeple, they do meet the Scribe Warden Uvasic, I think, who was the sort of pompous woman that they had met in the previous episode, who was like, we don't know what's going on. And as they arrive, the Scribe Warden basically hands over a file on Ludinus Deleth and is like, here's everything we know on Ludinus. And from this file, they find out a couple of things. They find out that Ludinus is actually not originally from Malesmere, but actually came from a small town in Isilra, and actually traveled to Malesmere later on, where he set up his home. And that Ludinus was also kind of a nobody, and until there were these two competing factions of wizards, that basically these factions broke out into all-out war on an evening called the Eve of Crimson Midnight, and that Ludinus was basically the hero who stopped this conflict, and because of that was able to leverage the creation of the Cerberus Assembly, was able to presumably get funding, or at least had the clout to begin to explore other arcane things, and really actually eventually became a bit of a thorn in the side in a number of temples and other political factions, to the point where he eventually sort of secluded himself, as we heard from the king, in his, I'd say like in his home, the Guild Hollow, or I can't remember the name for it. I don't know if you do either, but
Something like that.
Something like that. A place within Malesmere that he basically hung out.
Yeah.
So, and ultimately, whenever Malesmere fell, went full time into the Cerberus Assembly and eventually became known as its eldest member. So, Meanwhile, they do meet. The Scrubborn does introduce them to this guards person who is deeply experienced on the Savalier Woods in Malesmere, and this person basically Matt describes as basically Troy Baker. And Troy Baker is basically like, yeah, you guys are crazy for wanting to go. It's extremely dangerous, but best of luck. Just know that it's going to be like extremely dangerous. And there is an insight check on, what do you know about God Eaters? To which another whisper happens, which we don't know what exactly. Meanwhile, at Jacoby's, before F.C.G and Frida go in, Frida basically confesses their affection for F.C.G, and F.C.G returns it. And it's basically like, yeah, like I do feel a connection to you. I do feel this is special. I've never met anyone like you. F.C.G goes in for a little bit of a kiss, to which Frida goes in for a little bit of a kiss, to which F.C.G turns to meet the kiss full on.
What a move.
And this is probably the only like sincere moment of disappointment I've seen from Matt, because F.C.G mentions their flesh tongue being involved in the kiss, and there's just a look of disgust on Matt's face. He's like, there is no tongue. You have no tongue. They go in, they meet Jacoby, and Jacoby is just it's like a messy workshop, but he's this very upbeat tinkerer. And just like with Frida, they pop open the front plate of F.C.G and they look to reveal F.C.G's true name or true designation, Faithful Caregiver, which was just a really sweet moment. All this to say, in their conversation, they talk about, hey, could I get some, or Frida even mentions like, hey, F.C.G wants legs like me. And Jacoby's like, that would take a little bit of work. We can see what we can do. But in the meantime, they do agree to get the mithril half plate attached to F.C.G. And then from there, they decide to all go meet up back at their next destination, a clothing shop, which we go to break. And then, Will, you want to take it from there?
Yes, sir. Good job. So we pick back up with the other part of the crew headed to Catlin's Clothiers, or Clothiers. I don't know how you say it. And on the way, Chet pulls Imogen aside and asks how she's been doing with all of this, specifically with her mom's role and what happened. And Imogen says that, her mom's always been a comforting voice, like in her dreams, telling her to run and get away from here. But she's having to reconcile that with the fact that, she really did help Ludinus make all of this happen. So, maybe she should have just fought her when they ran into her at the solstice. And Chet asks, well, if we get a second chance, like, do you want us to like take out your mom, essentially? And Imogen says she's not sure. But she does say if Laudna, Orm, and Ashton like are gone because of what's happened, then yes, like let's take her down. Meanwhile, back at Jacoby's, F.C.G finishes getting the mithril half plate integrated into themselves, like getting that armor essentially. And Frida asks Jacoby about the possibility of using their power core to help like empower Arcana. And Jacoby's like, maybe. And I think he does give like this cable that could connect to their power core and then might possibly be able to connect to like specific prepared enchantments. But Frida's like wondering, like, can we use this to communicate with the other team AOL? And Jacoby's like, that's not my realm of expertise. Like, I don't know. So then we cut back to Deanna, and she quickly ducks into the Light Above Sanctum, which is a temple to the Dawnfather, and speaks with Evodon Leeds. And this is like one of the priests, if you will, of this temple. And he actually asks her, like, hey, have you felt your connection to the Dawnfather diminish? And Deanna actually lies and says no. And he says, oh, well, you're lucky because his connection has been severed, and he and many others are very worried. Deanna actually gives him the 500 gold that she got from from Ultgar and doing the toy mission, and she tells him, hey, like, you're not alone, use this money, reach out, help those around you. And then they take their leave. The crew then actually makes it to Catlin's, and they present the royal decree, which gives them free stuff basically. And she doesn't believe them at first, but then she like inspects the royal seal like over a firelight and can tell that it's legit. So she's then more than happy to help them, and
She
basically
sees
just
dollar signs.
yeah, she does. And she basically then just says, or Matt says rather, just describe to me like what the clothes you want, and we can get those made. So to quickly run through what people get here, Chetney gets like this velvety tracksuit, complete with like sweatband and armbands that
And a
will,
hoodie
yeah,
too.
and hoodie that will
Yeah.
grow and retract, kind of like the Hulk. So when he
Yeah.
transforms into a werewolf, his clothes won't rip. Um, Imogen asks for like this sheer flowy dress with long like fitted sleeves, like a leather kind of armor main piece, and a coat cut at the waist. I don't know what that means, but with a hood. Um, F.C.G asks for a long kind of like jacket similar to Frida's. And that's pretty much it. Deanna wants a green bodysuit to show off her figure, and
Which I
Frida
think she
is
mentions her figure is like Pixar-esque or something. The Disney
yeah,
Pixar like
like
slender at the top
Elastigirl.
and then like dump truck bottom. Just a funny time, funny conversation.
Yeah, for sure. This whole scene is pretty fun. Frida is happy with their coat, but it is pretty like banged up, so they get their coat repaired. In addition to that, they get F.C.G's name like stitched into it, and then I think either they get Deanna's name stitched into it as well, or it already was there. And
They already had Deanna's and they want to have FCG's added to it.
okay, yeah,
Which I'm like, man, they're falling hard and fast.
yeah,
Which I
yeah.
think Sam even jokes like, we're basically married at this point.
Yeah, we'll talk more on that in the discussion, but yeah, for sure. And then Fern wants only like the finest of the fabrics, and she wants a corset, which basically like the joke's made is corsets for everyone, and she wants to have exposed legs, and I think those were mainly the details that she mentioned. So everyone gets their clothes made. There's a little bit of conversation on should we get some stuff made for the other half of the team, but they're like, I think Imogen's like, I'll think on it. Um, but so they get their clothes and then they decide to head back to Deanna's. Once they make it there and they're inside, the party asks, "Hey, what were you guys doing in Eiselcross?" Which is a detail that just had come up in conversation earlier in the episode. And Deanna reveals that they were trying to find Aor, but there were basically monsters and Jorhassian soldiers everywhere, so they couldn't really, they couldn't really get that far. But they do want to go back at some point. The group then kind of puts together that Deanna and Frida are wanting to help them in their Malaismere quest. They didn't expect that they would be coming with them, but they're like, "Of course we are. Like, you guys need our help. Um, we're coming with you." So Belcells is pleasantly surprised by this, and they're like, "Okay, well, let's rest up, and we'll head out tomorrow morning after checking on our final couple of errands that we need to do." Um, but before bed, Fern says, "Hey, I left something at the clothing store," and leaves. But she doesn't go there. Instead, she makes her way just outside of the city to a small temple, like shrine to the Wild Mother. And there she asks the Wild Mother to talk to her friend Orem for her, and just says, "Hey, could you tell him that we're okay and we're alive?" She then waits to see if the Wild Mother if there's going to be any type of response, but and she rolls pretty high on perception, but all she hears is the wind. So she then heads back.
She's like, you're probably dead.
she, she then heads back to Deanna's and like quickly, I think, like wakes up Chetney that's on the couch and is basically like, "Hey, like if you don't make a move on Deanna, like I'm going to." And this kind of catches Chet off guard, and then she's like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go return to the sleepover," and she goes back up to the room where she, Imogen, and Deanna are sharing a room. Um, they they talk for a little bit before going to bed, and the main thing they talk about is FCG and Frida's budding relationship. And so they lean up to the wall to eavesdrop, and they can tell that Frida and FCG like share another quick kiss, and Frida asks if they can draw F.C.G. So the next, everyone goes to sleep. The next morning, they have breakfast. F.C.G. identifies the gloves, which I believe are the gloves they found in Drixlix's room, unless I'm confused. And he figures those to be the Weave Piercer gloves, which are basically these gloves that aid those who make spell attack rolls. So they're trying to decide between Imogen and Fern who should get those. So they head into town. F.C.G. picks up some spell components, and they quickly stop by the Temple of the Matron of Ravens. Chet knocks on the door, and they basically just barely crack it open. And he's like, "Hey, can you guys still feel your god's presence?" And the person says that she remains, but her thoughts are distant. We trust in her plan. And then they basically like immediately close the door on them. So they're like, okay, well, let's go get some goats. So they head to the goat farm and they present the royal seal again for 6 flat kept goats. And Matt lets the players decide, hey, you can kind of decide what your goat looks like and what their name is. So each person kind of runs through what kind of goat they would like. And after that, the trek to Malaeus Mir officially begins. And that's where the episode ends. Episode, once again, 55, Hope Within History. And again, if you are just listening to our recap and you want to hear Blake and I dive into our full discussion, which we are going to do now, check the description box below and you can find the link to that video. All righty, my friend.
Yeah. All right. What'd you think?
Quick question. Do I sound better? Like
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you do.
I realized I was in Discord, I was on the wrong mic.
Oh,
so that's why it sounded weird. And that's also why you could hear me like coughing, because when I was muting, it wasn't muting Discord. So hopefully the podcast doesn't hear that and it was just you, but we'll see.
Okay, I was gonna say, I was like, I know this does not sound how you normally sound. So
Yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, you sound normal now.
I think the recording software was always doing the right one. So hopefully,
okay.
Hopefully,
and
there's
you actually sound pretty normal now. You sounded like you had like smoked a pack before.
Oh,
and you were like, let's do this thing. This podcast has withered me as a person. But yeah, what'd you think of the episode, my friend?
I liked it, man. It was another a really just fun episode. We got our first kiss of the campaign, which did not expect it to be F.C.G.
I know,
but that was really fun. I thought, which I guess we'll probably talk more in depth on that element of the episode. So I guess I'll save my thoughts. But yeah, I liked the episode. It looks like we're getting. I mean, yeah, I guess again, this is probably a fit for another segment. But yeah, it was fun. Enjoyed the episode. A bit of a shorter one, at least comparatively to what we've been getting recently. But yeah, we kind of a setup episode for this next little mini adventure that we're having, and yeah, I had a good time. What about you?
Yeah, it's a great episode. Lots, we get weak to the lore content, and there was a lot of really good lore info.
Yes,
that I loved, and we'll have to talk about it because I think there's been a lot of like, not even so much Pepe Sylviing on our podcast, but definitely like some theories that I was less confident in.
yeah.
Now I'm like, I always said that from the start, even though back then I was like, this is definitely not true. But so it has been cool to see more content come out in terms of like backstory and history, and just the state of things like Resurrection, Magic Networking. But otherwise, yeah, fun episode. It was a shorter episode, but a fun episode. It's I say this like every episode, but putting on like the D&D player hat, you could just see the enjoyment at the clothing store and them riffing off of each other. Should we get this for Orm and Laudna, which Ashton often didn't get mentioned in these comments? So if I'm Towson, I'd be like, am I a joke to you guys? But anyway, good episode.
Yeah. That segment where like everyone was like, we should get something for Laudna was really funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is true. I guess Ashton does have that awesome coat already, so maybe they just like, he doesn't need anything new.
Yeah. So where to start today? in our conversation on the episode?
It's a good question. I guess we could just go ahead and start with the first kiss of the campaign, the first
Sure.
official
Yeah.
romance. Um, again, I mentioned this, but like was not expecting it to be F.C.G. But I love the I don't know if the right word of like ballsiness doesn't feel like the right word, but like the the risk taking, I guess, of
Yeah.
Christian as a guest to come in here and like attempt to romance like the least romantic
Yeah.
character of the cast and be successful. I
It's
just love
it's
it.
I feel like it's like it must be like an unspoken rule of thumb because remember Erika Ishii when she came in, she was like there was some joke about like I'm gonna get a kiss from each of you or
Yeah.
something by the time we're done today.
Yeah,
um,
like everyone, I mean, Robbie's still up in the air, but there's a lot of theories around. But basically every
yeah,
guest I think so far has kind of tried to romance one of the main cast.
yeah.
But
No,
yeah.
it was cute, and it definitely. I don't know. I think this is such like a cool theme. Isn't the right word, but like this detail of the show of like the character. I'd say characters, including Frida now, that should be the least human, I guess, actually seem to have like a greater expanse of emotion and depth of emotion. I think the romance piece was really fun. FCG sort of like experiencing not anxiety, but like flutters, I
Hmm.
guess. I think Sam describes FCG as like all the metal in their body like was tensing up.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I don't know. It was really sweet. And it's just this cool thing that keeps happening of and also goes back to my theory that I really do feel like they are souls um, in some way,
Yeah.
like repurposed souls in some way. But but yeah, no, it was really sweet, and I'm wondering where we go from here. In the sense of it makes me nervous. They're going to an extremely dangerous place. We didn't mention Isol Cross in the recap, I don't think. We know that Frida and Deanna have been there before, swarming with hundreds of soldiers. Resurrection magic doesn't work. I'm gonna be really upset if Frida dies and FCG's heart gets broken, is pretty much what I'm getting at.
I mean, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion or anything, but like there's a lot of like I don't know. They're going somewhere really dangerous. It's not like Christian's going to be a permanent member of the table, you know. So
Right.
like they're leaving at some point, be it if they pass away or if they just go their separate ways. So obviously one of those is better than the other, but like in any case, if there's this like budding romance and stuff, FCG at some point is going to lose this person,
Yeah.
so like how's that going to affect them? um but yeah,
I
I
thought
mean, I
I thought sorry, I was just gonna say I think it's interesting too that they mentioned there was I don't remember the conversation point, but it was basically like this. It was like losing someone you loved. Or no, it was like have you ever loved someone before or something like that. And he talked about Dancer. Did you
yeah,
catch that? Which
yeah.
I thought that was I guess I just didn't realize the depth of connection that they had with Dancer, which even makes it all the more tragic
Mhm.
um, of what happened there.
Yeah, I clocked that as well. Which I don't think it, and I know you weren't saying this, but I don't think that was like a romantic love, obviously, but
No, yeah, but
just love.
yeah, I
Um,
call it a depth of connection because it was in the conversation of like someone very meaningful to you.
yeah,
But yeah,
um, yeah, and yeah, it's gonna be interesting, and I'm wondering if, I mean, Christian obviously knows, like that he's a guest, right? And so I feel like he's throwing up a lot of like, and we've talked about this already, but like gonna make the big sacrifice play when the moment's right, which would fit in nicely to setting up this romance and stuff, you know? Because I mean, again, anything can happen, and you know, it's part way the dice to decide, part way, you know, them as a table with their character decisions to decide. But you know, asking about the arcane core, getting all that set up, like saying like, yeah, you, like, if I can help you guys get somewhere with my core, like I'll do it. And then like making this really big like romantic gesture and stuff, knowing he's not going to be a long-term part of the table. Like I'm wondering if he's like just gearing up to make a play
trying
like
to
that.
trying to force himself into the show permanently.
Exactly.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, we joked about my little mini campaign I was part of, and I was like, "It's the last session. If I don't die gloriously, then I'm gonna be super disappointed." So I could see, not like in a it's, the whole joke. It's pre-written, it's planned. I could see, yeah, Christian definitely being like, how do I want to finish my character? Um, so yeah, I could see some of that happening for sure. And I guess we will find out in the short term, not necessarily next episode, but I'd say at least probably a few episodes from now, we'll know how this all resolves.
Yeah, and I'm. It seems like, you know, we're setting off on this Malaismere journey, which
Mhm.
Matt kind of gave a description of how long it could take if you travel by this way, if you travel by that way. But the long and the short of it, it was like a 3 or 4 day journey just to get there. Um,
About a week, I think.
okay, and then however long
Or it's a
actually.
few days. I think it said it's a few days if you take the river, but that it was extremely dangerous, and they ultimately decided the goats, and so it'd be about a week, I think.
Okay, so a week, however long they're actually there. Let's just call it like a day or two, just for sake of being clean, and then another week back. Which obviously the travel could be fast traveled for the most part, you know, unless like yeah, I don't know, that could go fast. Um, but I wonder how many more episodes we're looking at getting with this group.
I think
Um,
everyone's thinking that, right? And I think I think this was the episode that I finally just kind of like let go and came to terms with, like, this is where we are. Because every episode I have felt like this sense of impatience of like, man, I really want to know what's happening with Ashton Orm and Laudna.
mhm.
And this, I think I kind of just came to terms. I wasn't like frustrated, but I could feel that tension, and I was kind of just like, okay, this just is what it is. Because I don't think they make it to Molesmere next episode. I think because there were so many details mentioned about raiders. There was like an orc faction mentioned. They mentioned the Shady Creek Run being some of its inhabitants take shelter in the Savalier Woods to sort of like hide their shady business. It just seems like there's going to be. I mean, I guess they could make it to Lesmere, but I wouldn't be surprised if the journey's hijacked in some way, not long term, but for the length of tonight's episode.
Mm.
Um, so there's that. But yeah, I'm expecting 2 or 3 more episodes here.
It seems that there's at least 2 or 3 more episodes worth of content just in this journey alone. So I agree with that. I'm curious if, are we gonna get the quote unquote conclusion to this arc before we swap over, or could we perhaps get a, I like tonight's episode is going to be with this crew, like I'm almost certain, but I'm wondering if
Yeah.
let's just, for sake of what I'm trying to talk about here, let's say we get 3 more episodes, or four, let's say we get 4 more episodes with this crew. Is it at all possible that 2 episodes from now we suddenly switch, and then like we come
Yeah.
back together? Or I wonder if this will complete and then we'll go to the next one, type of
I
thing.
think for the sake of scheduling, they're going to conclude this altogether. They already have Abria and Christian in the studio on a normal cadence, and we already know that there will be guests with the other story, the other group, um, the AOL group, and so I would be surprised if they cut away only to come back later.
I
What
think
it
you're
could
right.
happen, but I just think scheduling wise, it's like let's finish what we have here. Um, I think in hindsight, people will look back at this arc in a positive way, but I mean, there has been criticism on this, and I personally have, not in a negative way or harsh way, but I have felt, I said it earlier, impatient. Um, and I think some of that impatience, it's just personal opinion, but we talked about this during EXU season 1, and I don't remember the exact data point it was, but we were like, it was something like, hey, if there had been like a conversation point, like the way this was described or marketed was not how it necessarily lined up, and that created a lot of frustration with people. Similarly, I wonder if a simple tweet early on would have resolved some tension of like, hey, we're going to be spending time with this group. We love Ashton, Orm, and Laudna, and we'll be continuing their journey several episodes from now.
Just to set expectations.
Just to set yeah, and you know, and obviously it's not like pre-planned, but just something said that's just like, hey, this is where we're going to be in the short term.
Mhm.
This is the focus in the short term. And I think something like that just it helps people. It just helps people to frame, like you just said, it sets expectations, and it's like, okay, yeah, because like when I at the start, because I watched this episode late, and so I was watching it on YouTube. I immediately scanned the play bar to see is Ashton, Orm, and
You
Laudna, are they in it at
dirty
all?
little spoiler goblin.
I didn't spoil anything. I just looked at the preview
You
page.
tried to spoiler.
I needed to know, But like, and then that's when I like had this moment of just like, I'm just gonna enjoy this. I'm just gonna let go what I want and just enjoy this. And I really did enjoy the
Yeah.
episode. And teach their own. I'm not saying everyone needs to do that, but I do think some expectation settings from a production side probably would have helped a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think it definitely would have, but I do understand why they wouldn't, just in the sense of it's kind of like, I don't know if spoilery is the right word necessarily, but it kind of like, I can't think of a better word. So it's kind of
Yeah.
spoilery in the sense that like, hey, just so you guys know, we're going to be doing 8 episodes with this group, and so people are like, wait, we're not going to see this other group for 2.5 months. Like, what are they? So like, what goes on for these 8 episodes, type of thing.
Right. Right.
Um, so like, I can see both sides. Like, I understand people that, and I mean, I miss those characters too. So like, I don't know if it's fair to call that a criticism, just because I mean, I don't like fault them for the decision, the path they took, but like just inevitably, of course, I miss the rest of the cast, like, um, obviously. But I agree with what you said in the sense of, I think coming back to this, I think a lot of people that maybe are frustrated will, it'll be more palatable in like a rewatch scenario or a binge
Right.
scenario. Cause and again, you know, I'm not trying to say anyone's viewpoint is wrong. Like, everyone's entitled to their opinion and to feel how they feel about it. Totally understand. Um, but yeah, I just think it's cool that like they're doing something like this in general. It's definitely gone on longer than I expected it to. But I think that's honestly kind of cool. Um, I'm where I've started to land now is we had the whole creator clash thing, and I think that was maybe a factor, obviously. But since the whole cast has typically been in each
Hmm.
episode so far, like at the beginning for the announcements, I'm wondering if they are pulling, and I think we mentioned this maybe in an earlier episode, but if not like double days, like their team Uthadern and team AOL, I think they've all been recording like simultaneously for the most part. And then I think because they're doing it, then the cast could maybe take like a 2 or 3 month summer break while all these episodes are airing,
Yeah. I could.
without
Yeah.
having to actually take a a summer break, which is, a benefit of the pre-recording schedule that we have now. Um, so that's one factor that I think could maybe be playing into like why we're getting like why it's such of a long I don't know, I'm blanking here. Such a long like excursion with each team, so that they can kind of build up
Yeah.
this free time, if you will.
I
Um,
think that's definitely it's like the business side of running the brand in that people want time off. I mean, we love D&D, but I think it's fair to love D&D and then also like want to take a break from your.
yeah, yeah, of
Think about
course.
it. If an episode's 4.5 hours long, there's probably also like some buffer time at the start and at the end. So I would assume it's a 5 to 6 hour engagement weekly,
Hmm.
um, with kids involved, and like having to figure out babysitters and things like that.
Yeah, and they've got a whole like
Yeah.
production crew of employees and stuff as
Oh,
well.
yeah, yeah, and like other things that they're dealing with. Again, just like the brand, like recording Vox Machina season 3 and Mighty Nine season 1. Like there's a lot happening here. So yeah, I could definitely get on board with your idea that there's double days, double recordings, and the staff's gonna get like a summer break of some
Yeah,
kind, which I think's great, you
yeah.
know. So that checks out for me, I think.
So
So
yeah, I know. Sure, people are tired of us speculating on this by now, so we can move on. But yeah, um, I kind of even forgot where we were before that. I guess anything else on the romance? I do think that it's kind of like basically some puppy love, and I think we're gonna have a broken heart, not from like cheating or moving on, but
yeah.
from either death or like forced separation.
I think it's part of the beauty of FCG's character, their journey of they are experiencing, I said it before, like the whole range of emotions. And so I think it's always a bit weird to talk about this too, because it's not pre-planned, but so we're just kind of just talking about like what would be punchy for us, I guess. But yeah, I think to experience the loss of love, would be an interesting, and I think Sam, I would assume, is also cognizant of that. Sam's just so gifted at I don't know how to describe it, like the fullness of a character.
Yeah.
I feel like Sam is a very surprising, he plays characters that very much surprise you,
Mhm.
and connect with you. So yeah, I'm on board with that too. I like that theory.
And is he gonna go berserk mode when that does happen? Like if Frida dies specifically, like is FCG
Good
gonna
point.
like
It could be, yeah, because jokingly asked Matt, I say half jokingly actually, about their stress points. How my
yeah,
stress points doing? Um, so yeah, it could be a Serenity type of scene where it
yeah.
goes full murder bot, but is like mowing down like hundreds of soldiers, or you know, it's my turn to protect you now, like full Terminator against the bad guys. Um, so I don't know. I think it'd be really interesting for sure. What's going on, by the way, in Isocross? Isocross, is that the area around the ruins of Aor?
Yeah. So like the different Aor crash sites, if you will, are in Isocross, which is basically
Okay.
like this snowy um tundra. There are some like points of civilization there, but it's mostly wilderness doesn't evoke the right imagery because it's like snowy, but it's kind of like untamed land in that way. But yeah, they said there were tons of monsters, which I'm wondering if that's like the solstice. I think Matt mentioned at some point can like birth new crazy creatures and stuff, and tons of Jorhassian soldiers. So I don't know why specifically all the soldiers would be there. I mean, that is, they are out there, like, so it's not like crazy that they're there, but the fact that there's so many, I wonder if they're also diving into the Aeolian ruins, Are they out and about because of what's going on with the solstice? Um, very curious what the
The Mighty
commotion
Nine went there,
they did.
right?
Mhm.
Okay. And does it seem like it's changed based on the description, or was it
Uh,
also pretty wild
no,
back in the day?
it doesn't sound like it's changed, other than the fact that I'm wondering why it's crawling with so many
Yeah.
soldiers.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I don't know. And they didn't. I'm assuming that they were out there, meaning Deanna and Frida, to like just look for stuff to help Frida figure out what's going on with themselves. But I feel
So
like
they
they didn't
did,
say, or did they?
no, I don't think they did. I think they got kind of hijacked on like what was going on there, like what was happening. Because didn't
Hmm.
they say they were going because Frida was having dreams and they wanted to like, yeah, like let's go and just see if we can figure something out.
I don't remember that, but that makes sense. That would, you know,
Yeah, I don't know.
that would connect the dots. Um. So yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious what the Jorhassian Empire's got going on right now. You know, they may be slightly more clued in. They might not be, but they might be slightly more clued in to what's going on the whole, like regarding the solstice and stuff. Well, okay, we know that there was a beacon in the in the Malleus Key, which the Jorhassian or the Kryn dynasty may or may not have known about. If they did know about it, then that's really gonna have upset them, because those are like the holiest of artifacts to their
So
culture.
their
They're the
job's
ones
to
that like
protect
believe in
it.
the Luxon.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But it's possible Ludinus had that beacon and they didn't know that he had it. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so yeah, just curious to know what they know and what exactly they've got going on. Um, but or go ahead if you're about to.
I was actually gonna semi change the conversation to talk
Yeah,
about
yeah,
lewdness.
yeah. Okay, that's what I was gonna do too.
Yeah. So we got some more info on lewdness. Um, a lot of info. It didn't seem
Yeah.
like a lot, but it felt like a lot. His backstory, kind of his rise to power in Malesmere. I thought it was really interesting, the detail that he was actually from Asilra.
Mm-hmm.
Because is Asilra where Vasselheim is?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, we've theorized on the podcast that could he, how old is he, and could he have been alive during the calamity, and maybe this event is what basically set him off on a plan to get revenge against the gods, what have you.
Yeah.
um I know in the past we talked about maybe he's from Aor. To me, this checked another box though, of like, we know Vasselheim was one of the only cities, maybe the only city that could defend itself during the calamity. Um, could he originally be from Vasselheim, maybe, or maybe was in Vasselheim, or I don't know. I just thought it was interesting and thought it's a nice little detail that he's actually from the continent of where one of the only cities, the oldest city, was able to survive the calamity.
Yeah. The cradle of civilization. I think Matt said he was from a town called Illidale,
Yeah, which I don't know where
which
that is.
I don't either. I don't think that had ever been mentioned before. Um, and it wasn't on the wiki either, so I think it is new. But yeah, I was thinking the same thing you were, that that's just kind of another um information point in this working theory that we have, that he is. I mean, we it's confirmed that he's like ancient. We just don't know to the extent of what. But yeah, to me, this was another point confirming that he probably was around back then. And we also basically got confirmation of something else we had speculated on, in that the fall of Malaesmere was because of Ludinus, like working on what he's working on right now still. Like that was,
Yeah,
one step in his plan to reaching this Malleus Key Predathos plan, and things just got out of hand and the corruption spread out. This very same corruption that was found in Aor. So again, I think that connects him from the Malleus Key
yeah,
to Malaesmere back to Aor, which we know
yeah,
the Malleus, the hammer Malleus or whatever, from from Aor, which is why the gods and the betrayer gods teamed up and tore it from the sky. I think it makes a whole lot of sense to think that Ludinus was behind each of those things.
Mhm.
So yeah, the fact that he was from Isilra just again makes me think, okay, he's really old, and also makes me think that like he's kind of had to, and this is maybe just me reaching, but he's had to lie at different points to conceal his like age, So
Mhm.
like to most of the world, they probably assume he's from Malaismere,
Yeah.
And then, but no, the king who was from there, he's like, oh no, he was actually from Isilra, which is probably just what he had to say to the people in Malaismere, which maybe he is from Isilra. I'm not saying he's not, but to me, all these points just kind of lined up. Um,
Yeah, and it does seem unusual how old he is. And for our listeners, something we've also theorized is he somehow manipulating Luxon beacons to extend his lifespan, to I don't know, de-age himself in some way, or just extend his life. I don't know, because we know he's been fascinated with the Luxon beacons. So
yeah, I
who
mean,
knows?
it seems like there's definitely an element of that. Now, if it's literally the oh my gosh, what's it called? I keep wanting to say consummation, but that's
Something
not
else.
consecution.
Constitution, yeah.
Is it literally consecution, or is he doing something else? Because the one thing about consecution is that you are like reincarnated in a sense, and that you get like a new body because like
Mhm.
your soul is like you do die, and then your soul is just eventually reborn, which is entirely possible to have happened. But if he is just always remaining in the same elven body, maybe he has found some other way.
He
Um,
probably like cracks it open and like spoons out the jelly on the inside and just it de-ages him. I don't know.
delicious. But along with the Luxon beacons and the Kryn dynasty, there was this whole I don't know if it's fair to call it a new school of magic. It was new in the sense that like Matt made it up, but in the world of Exandria, it's not necessarily new, but called Dunamancy, which is kind of revolves around all of these things,
Mhm.
um, and revolves around the manipulation of time. So maybe if not literal consecution, maybe Ludinus is so skilled in this set of magic that he has found a way to either stop his aging process or reverse it in some manner, or at least
Well,
slow it down.
and we know something happened during the start of the solstice where he seemed to like
Right.
hold time and like manipulated time in some way. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I think it it checks a lot of boxes for me, but on the same token, I feel like you don't create a villain who can control time, because then it feels like there's too many like plot holes as to like when the final encounter actually happens. It's like, well, why didn't they just like pause time and just like I don't know, but all that to say, I could see him having some kind of control of time that
Yeah.
is extending his life. But
Yeah, and it could be more like not as simple as just like literal master of time like Kang the Conqueror, but like he
the
just is
time
able to
master,
manipulate it in certain ways. And
yeah,
he at
right.
least did have to have the full power of the Malleus key, like empowered by the ley lines and the Luxon to
Yeah.
do that time stop that he did. Um,
Speaking of the ley lines, I think it was Imogen or someone asked the question to Matt: are the ley lines holding steady? Maybe in the conversation of the apogee solstice it seemed to be extended,
mhm.
which I'm so freaking curious. Like, why is it extended? What's happening in Marquette? But yeah, there was a question about the ley lines. Are they holding where they were? And I don't remember his answer. I don't know if you remember it either, or if the answer was just like I don't know. Um,
I think they were. I think everything is in place where it was, even though it shouldn't be anymore. Um, which yeah, we're in a perpetual solstice now, which is very interesting. Like, I,
hmm.
which is also at least potentially related to time manipulation. Um, but yeah, okay. One, it's crazy. I'm assuming it's necessary in order to have enough time for this drill, if you will, to drill into Rudis. My question is, once that's done, will it then be released and the solstice will end, or is it like we are forever living in a perpetual solstice from now on?
I don't know.
Very curious. I'm assuming it's the former, but um, yeah, I mean, I'm wondering if like, and it seems to be the case, but like, is once I guess once this ends, if they can figure out a way for it to end, then resurrection magic will be back. You know, all these
Yeah.
magics will come back.
So, and speaking of like resurrection magic, we have this great scene with the cleric leads at the Dawnfather Temple,
Hmm.
how they're really freaked out, and it seems like the gods seem to be, and sit at the table a couple times, seem to be running away. Um, I want to talk about the Matron of Ravens, because Imogen, I don't know if it was this episode or the last episode, but Imogen points out, why are they wearing the like insignias of the Matron of Ravens? Like, what's happening here? And they also visit the temple, um, where the person like peeks out and says, like, she's still among us. Um, but then also it's kind of like, similar to other gods, like is distant.
Hmm.
What I'm getting at, is there a situation where the Matron of Ravens is in on it in some way?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that's possible, but I don't think they would have had to lure Vax. I think she would have just like willingly given a piece of her divinity to like
Hmm.
power the machine, if so.
Unless she double crossed Vax, which I don't know, but
I mean, it's possible. We know that, yeah, I mean, we know that
I
she
know it's a,
was a mortal that ascended to
I
godhood.
I know it's a huge stretch. I know it's a huge stretch. Let me just Pepe Sylvia for a second.
Yeah.
What if Ludinus knew the Matron of Ravens when she was human,
Hmm.
and there's a relationship there in some way? I don't know, but I'm thinking about just the theme of permanent death, and how the Ruby Vanguard, most notably Atahan, um, one like her niche is like permanent death, like kill someone, they're dead, can't come back.
Hmm.
And I'm also thinking about the magics that aren't working. One of them being resurrection spells, again, permanent death. And so I just kind of wonder, is it possible there's some kind of double cross happening with the gods, where it's, just as the matron wanted to arise into godhood, maybe also wants to arise over the other gods, but more importantly wants to create permanent death. I don't know. It's probably mischaracterizing. I never watched campaign 1, obviously, so I'm probably mischaracterizing it, but I do think it's odd, Imogen pointing out, her saying like why are they wearing these insignias? Um which I don't know. I don't know why they're wearing it.
Yeah.
Like, why
Well,
serve a god that you aim to kill?
well, we kind of talked about this a little bit in an earlier episode. I think a, there's two possibilities in my mind. Not that there can't be more than these two, but one is that, you know, even though Ludinus has this plan to rid the world of the gods, he has an admiration for the matron. I mean, I think he's even said as much in part of his speech. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but because she was a mortal who took
Right.
one out and ascended to its place, like I think he admired that, and that saw
Yeah.
the potential of what mortals could do because of that. So like that could be, that admiration could be like one reason for why the
Yeah. That
whatever they're
makes sense.
called, have her symbols. And another one could be part of the long con, if you
Right.
could call it that, in order to lure Vax. Not that Vax, was paying attention at all to what these disciples were wearing, but it could have just been part of the charade,
Mhm.
if you will.
Yeah, I
Um,
could see that.
but that, I mean, again, not to say that there couldn't be something deeper with the matron going on. I do think that's possible. I just don't know if I'm on that page um, myself. But I mean, she's one of the most enigmatic characters in the canon. We don't really know anything about her. I think Ludinus knowing her is really interesting because if what we theorize about Ludinus to be true, then he would be from around the same time. Aside from the fact that she had her name like struck from
Mhm.
history or whatever. I don't really know like how the ins and outs of that work, but no one really knows who that was. Now, is that because they're all dead, or is it because there was some like, and once she was a god, she made people forget or something? Um,
Yeah, I will say, you know what? It's a crazy stretch. I think the other like theory that started out as like a crazy stretch was this whole lewdness. Could he actually be super old? Like we called all of that stuff before a lot of these details came out. So if we go 1 for 2, I'm happy. I'm happy with it. So
I
anyway,
think there's more to unpack for sure. It'd be what like, yeah, it'd be crazy like if Ludinus and the matron were like star-crossed lovers, and this is like
yeah,
you
yeah.
know some plan to get back or something. Um, Yeah, I mean, I want to know more about just lewdness in general. We have a picture, but not like we don't have the full story.
I think
Um,
we're heading to we've gotten some very lore meaty episodes. I think we're heading to a very lore heavy episode when they get to Malesimir.
yeah, I think
Um,
we're gonna find out a lot about kind of the stuff we were outlining a minute ago with like the through line from Aor to today, and how that runs through Maleismere with lewdness.
and did you
I'm still
say? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm still curious about the Nightmare King as well. If he perhaps was a Malaismere individual, because
Mm,
they mentioned this corruption, how it like twisted things, which we don't.
mm.
Uh, the Nightmare King might just be from the Fae, for all I know. But if he was an elf at some point, that could be the explanation for why he is so different now.
He has
Plus,
Elvis features. I'm pretty sure.
yeah, and we know he likes to experiment, so it didn't seem like he, unless he was like doing a deception check, it didn't seem like he was too in the know on Ludinus's machinations, which you would think he would at least be somewhat in the know if he was the one
Yeah,
experimenting alongside him. But
but if they are old roommates, it would make sense why Ludinus went to him in the Fae
yeah,
to help build the Malleus Key.
yeah, which
You know?
maybe it was just they did work together, but Ludinus always, it was like a need to know basis, like just
Yeah,
or lied even about what he was working
yeah.
on. But yeah, I'm really interested to head there, and I assume find out some pretty interesting things.
Didn't you say did the Mighty Nine go there?
No, they went near there
Oh,
because
oh, okay.
Caduceus lives.
In the Savalier
Yeah,
Woods,
like the corruption of the Savalier Woods, like is encroaching on his family's like his
bro. Could we get Taliesin at the table
as
as Caduceus?
Caduceus. I don't think so, just because I think we could get Caduceus, but thus far, Matt has always like no one
Yeah.
has ever reprised their role in that way. So I would assume it would just
That's
be
like
Matt.
role playing him, and Ashton just like peeks into the camera frame. I'm gonna need you
But
to go.
I do think there's a high like if we see it on screen or not, I don't know. But like I'm almost certain now, which is something we talked on last episode, that Umahara or that bull or whatever is going to find Caduceus, because the king talked about like these beasts and how they were their guardians, and like now that it's gone back and it's going to try to find a way to like maybe restore their home, Caduceus is the one trying to do that. And if they go into the Savalier Wood, Caduceus is like the only beacon of non-corruption there. So I feel like that's 100% happening, whether we see it or not, though.
Yeah. What exactly is Caduceus doing though? Like
Like in
going out and
general.
foraging like corrupted plants and then going back and like,
So
throwing in
they
the mortar and pestle, or like what are they doing?
his family, the Caduceus Clay, and so the Clay's family has farm is not the right word. I can't think of the right word, but like
Okay.
they have like a a little place. where they, I mean, I guess somebody correct me in the comments, but I'm just going to use the word farm. It's not exactly right, but they've got a little farm, and like their duty has been to like hold off the corruption in this area. And then his kind of one of his like little mini quests was to find a reversal for the corruption. Um, they didn't that didn't get quote unquote solved in campaign 2, but like I've mentioned, they did find the very same corruption exploring some of the ruins of Aor when they were there. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, I
Interesting.
think that this beast, maybe they go find some of the other 7 mythical beasts or whatever. Maybe they'll team up with the clays and help get that taken care of. But we may very well run into them on the way to Malaismere.
Mhm.
So that would be kind of
Yeah.
cool to see.
Hmm. What else, my friend, you want to talk
Um,
about from this episode?
well, one quick random point is that we're going to Malaismere, presumably going to find some lore, get some more pieces to the puzzle with Ludinus. We did find out he was from Asilra. We don't know where the rest of the party is for certain. We have some pretty good guesses, but it would be interesting if they were in Asilra. And maybe they could get kind of the other half of the puzzle if they figure
Yeah.
out where they are.
So it was never confirmed they were in Taldore. That was just people's guess.
Um, yeah,
Because
people
I
have
thought we
just
had said
guessed.
they were in Taldore, and we
Well,
knew.
there's one place that would make sense based on what Matt described when they got zoinked away. That makes sense to me. I'm not looking at it right now, so I can't remember off the top of my head where it was, but it was near. I think it
Marsh
was
or
near like
something.
Craghammer and stuff, sort of. I
Yeah.
might be
Okay.
making that up, um, but it was near where the one of the Ashari peoples were. Um,
Yeah.
but the Hishari are from Asilra, so that would be another interesting point if they did end up there. Because there could be some Ashton stuff and also
I
some lewdness stuff.
feel to me, if Isilra makes more sense because Orem, um, Chetney got his story with Ultgar, and it kind of feels like Ashton is not next up, but seems to be the most unexplored, I
Yeah,
guess.
and of the 3
Um,
in that group, it seems like it would be him. But I guess it depends on where they actually are.
it's called the Pools of Whitback. Was like the
Right.
swampy near Terra and Craghammer, like the
Okay, yeah.
swampy, marshy place that we were wondering, like, could it be this? So
So yeah. That we'll see. Um but one other thing I wanted to mention really quick while I'm going through my notes is that we know that resurrection magic doesn't work. Um but teleportation seems to work. I'm not buying it. I think those people are teleporting away, but like they are not, it's not going smoothly,
it
you
was
know?
really vague to me. I couldn't tell what was being said because didn't they say that some people had sent people away or something
Mm-hmm.
like something, but they hadn't come back yet or something like that.
Right.
So there's no reason to lie and be like, oh yeah, we have teleporting. So yeah, there's something really weird happening there that I'm really
Yeah. I think
curious
that
about.
similar to like all the magic, it works in the sense that like when they use a sending spell, like they send the spell, like they say their words, it just there's interference and it doesn't go through or whatever. So I'm thinking people are teleporting, but they're in terms of mechanics, there's probably like some rolls that have to be made, and then you may not end up where you want it to go. It may not even be possible to end up where you want to go, but yeah, they haven't come back yet because like I guess what they're assuming is that like they haven't finished their mission, so they haven't come back yet. But since we know
Yeah,
message spells don't work, there's no way for these people wherever they end up to like send for help, you know? So
right, right.
I
Yeah,
I'm curious to see because one the whole point of not the whole point, but like we'll go do this Malaismere journey, and by the time we get back, you know, your people that teleported away are supposed to be back, right?
right.
And I think
Yeah.
so. They're like assuming they might then get teleported by them. Um, you know, I don't. I don't necessarily think those people are going to end up coming back unless they just like hike back on foot from whoever they ended up
Yeah.
teleporting to. But I'm really curious to see if Bell's Hells attempts a teleport by some means and what what that might lead to.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
don't know how else they're going to get wherever they're trying to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think the solstice is here indefinitely. I do think it will, as they come back, it will mysteriously be over and they will be able to teleport. And then
Mm,
we'll cut to the other group and their several episodes will peak in some event that ends the solstice.
mm.
Doesn't mean they win, but something happens that ends it and that allows the group to come back together then.
Yeah, maybe.
Hopefully all together with no deaths. And
Yeah.
nothing bad's happened.
Fingers crossed.
So
Um, one other quick thing that I wanted to mention was when talking about the fall of Melaesmere and the corruption and stuff. One thing that was mentioned was I'm trying to find my exact note on where I wrote this. I can't find it, so I'm paraphrasing. But one of the things that was mentioned was like these people that died like couldn't pass on, and now like their twisted spirits like are still roaming or whatever. So
I
to me,
missed
that's
that.
like the first data point of no resurrections. So I'm wondering if like
Yeah.
that is where
Hmm.
Ludinus cultivated this potential
Yeah.
toxin that now Odahan uses.
Right.
Um, which it's just an interesting little bullet point to this whole other discussion we're having about permanent death and stuff.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know.
Very interesting.
I'm just looking at this map of Taldore. I wonder, is there a map of Isilra?
Not an official one, like
Okay.
because they've never been there. Well, I mean, they've been to Vasselheim, but they've never like, you know, yeah. There's never been a map that like Matt handed to the players for Asura,
Yeah, okay.
but there's some fan made ones.
Yeah. This fan made one has the name of one section and that's it.
Oh,
So
do you think that the thing beneath Melaesmere, the font of energy, was a ley line,
I don't know what
a
that
nexus
was.
point?
I don't know what it was. I thought that was such like an interesting detail. I actually forgot about it till you mentioned it. Um, but yeah,
It lines
could
up
be.
at least. Like I don't know what else it would be, and maybe it's like one of these things that again led the work to where it is today. But if it's not, I don't know what that is.
If it is like a ley line, maybe they can ride it to the other ley lines. I don't know. So it beats me. But anyway, anything else, my friend?
I think that's it. I think that's all I got.
Okay. Let us know what y'all thought about the episode and your favorite theories. And we'll be back next week to talk about tonight's episode. So stay tuned. And we'll also have our next episode for Worlds Beyond Number out soon as well. So
Yeah.
but
Yeah. For those of you that haven't checked that out yet, I would highly recommend it.
thumbnail.
Thumbnail. I was thinking like kind of like I was thinking about putting F.C.G and Frida on the thumbnail. So maybe just like, like
Yeah, yeah,
something kind
yeah.
of like this.
I like that a lot. Okay, yeah. Hmm. That's great. All right.
Alrighty, y'all.
All right.
Have a good one.
See you guys. Bye.